John Bolton's home and office have been raided by the FBI, and the left's media circus exploded overnight. But when Kristen Welker tried to paint this as a political hit job, JD Vance shut it down cold. His blistering, no-holds-barred takedown exposes the truth about law, order, and justice, no matter who's involved. Then over in Washington, Adam Schiff, he's back in the spotlight after serious allegations of mortgage fraud, and the way the media is handling him, night and day compared to the Bolton investigation. And then in Chicago, Mayor Brandon Johnson, he lost it on national television. He's attacking President Trump's plan to send in the National Guard to crack down on violent crime. Do Black lives really matter? I guess we're about to find out. We're breaking down the facts, calling out the hypocrisy, and exposing what the mainstream media won't tell you.
John, this is the latest indication the Trump administration is targeting the president's political enemies.
I mean, Bolton was very high on the president's enemies list.
This is chilling. It really is. Clearly, this is retribution. Clearly, this is using the FBI in a way that not only tarnishes the FBI, but it tarnishes our country. I mean, this is what they do in countries where they don't have rule of law.
I am beyond grateful for all of your support thus far. Let's keep the momentum going. Hit that like button for me and share your thoughts down below. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so you stay up to date on all the latest headlines, such as this one. Suddenly, we are seeing concern for civil liberties in a way we haven't seen before. These are the same people who cheered when the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago. They acted like a signed warrant meant Trump was guilty. But now that it's John Bolton, they are clutching their pearls and yelling about retribution. Let's rewind the tape a little bit to what Bolton himself said during the Trump raid, because this is rich.
I don't think he cared about the classification system. I don't think he appreciated the sensitivity of this information, and he didn't appreciate the sensitivity of how it was often acquired, the so-called sources and methods. Some days he liked to eat a lot of French fries. Some days he took classified documents. He wanted them. Why did he want them? Because he could get them.
So Trump takes documents and it's treason, but when Bolton does it, crickets? I mean, Bolton all but admits he took classified materials just to cash in on a book deal. You tell me which is worse. And if you're still torn, maybe ask yourself this. Who do you trust more? Trump, who's prioritized America first, or the guy who openly brags about planning a coup?
One doesn't have to be brilliant to attempt a coup.
I disagree with that. As somebody who has helped plan coup d'etat, not here, but, other places, it takes a lot of work. And that's not what he did.
When we were talking about what is capable, what you need to do to be able to plan a coup, and you cited your expertise having planned coups.
I'm not going to get into the specifics.
That's who the left is now circling the wagons around. And just like clockwork, NBC's Kristen Welker tried to spin this as political payback when she questioned Vice President JD Vance on Meet the Press. But Vance, he's not buying it. Watch for yourself.
And unlike the Biden DOJ and the Biden FBI, our law enforcement agencies are going to be driven by law and not by politics. And so if we think that Ambassador Bolton has committed a crime, of course, eventually prosecutions will come. But as you know, Kristen, this is all part of gathering evidence, trying to understand something that we're worried about. And of course, I'll let the FBI comment on the next stage of the investigation.
Pretty straightforward. You break the law, you face consequences, no matter who you are. Welker then took a page out of Kamala's playbook, and she pushed him on the root causes of the investigation. Take a look.
What's at the root of this? Is this about classified documents?
Well, again, I'll let the FBI speak to that. Classified documents are certainly part of it, but I think that there's a broad concern about Ambassador Bolton. They're going to look into it. And like I said, if there's no crime here, we're not going to prosecute it. If there is a crime here, of course, Ambassador Bolton will get his day in court. That's how it should be. But again, our focus here is on, did he break the law? Did he commit crimes against the American people? If so, then he deserves to be prosecuted.
That's how the justice system is supposed to work, based on evidence, not emotions. But apparently when the left's political allies are under investigation, it's suddenly a witch hunt. I mean, after JD Vance calmly explained that no one is above the law, not even John Bolton, Kristen Welker still wouldn't let go of the narrative. She kept pushing this idea that Bolton was being targeted simply because he criticized the president.
Ambassador Bolton is a frequent critic
Sure.
of President Trump's. He's also on Kash Patel's enemies list. The administration has already revoked his security clearance, Secret Service protection. Is Ambassador Bolton being targeted because he's a critic of President Trump?
No, not at all. And in fact, if we were trying to do that, we would just throw out prosecutions willy-nilly like the Biden administration DOJ did, prosecutions that later got thrown out in court. If we bring a case, and of course we haven't done that yet, the Department of Justice has not done that yet, we are investigating Ambassador Bolton, but if they ultimately bring a case, it will be because they determine that he has broken the law. We're going to be careful about that. We're going to be deliberate about that because we don't think that we should throw people, even if they disagree with us politically, maybe especially if they disagree with us politically. You shouldn't throw people willy-nilly in prison. You should let the law drive these determinations.
You'd think Kristen might back off after that response, but no, she doubled down. Because in her world, being a critic of Trump is supposed to make you untouchable, no matter what you've done. But JD Vance didn't flinch. He took the shot and fired right back at her, reminding the media that just because they see retribution doesn't mean it's real. And maybe, just maybe, they should stop projecting and start paying attention to the facts.
But you know, a lot of people have already looked at this and said, this looks a lot like retribution. Is this retribution?
Well, who has said it looks a lot like retribution, Kristen? A lot of people who tried to throw Donald Trump in prison for completely fake charges that were later thrown out by multiple different courts. I suspect that if the media and the American people let this case actually unfold, if they let the investigation unfold as it's currently doing, they're going to find out that what we're doing is being very deliberate and being very driven by the national interest and by the law here, and that's as it should be.
Exactly. The same people who spent years trying to jail Trump on bogus charges, they now expect us to panic the moment one of their own gets a visit from the FBI. Sorry, but accountability? It's not retribution, unless you've gotten so used to immunity that you have forgotten what justice actually looks like. Now, over at Fox News, they're praising the FBI for not leaking information about this investigation like we used to see Comey do on a regular basis. Take a look.
The people that are complaining about revenge or weaponization probably should have spoke up back in 22 and 23, among other years, if they really wanted to be consistent on this. And what I love so far is we're not getting a bunch of leaks. This is not Jim Comey with his special employee to leak things to the New York Times to tell you everything about the evidence and to justify themselves politically. We're all sitting here guessing and saying we don't know where this is going. That's a good sign that law enforcement's treating it professionally.
That's an excellent point. I mean, the fact that we don't know every detail is actually proof that this is not a PR stunt. It's being handled in the proper manner. Now, contrast that with Kristen Welker's next guest, Congressman Adam Schiff. He is facing his own investigation for mortgage fraud and possibly maybe in the future for leaking classified information. Watch how differently she handles him because there are zero follow-ups.
I think this is clearly retribution. I mean, the idea that they just picked John Bolton, a prominent critic of the president, at random. What the president is trying to do here is very systemic and systematic, and that is anyone who stands up to the president, anyone who criticizes the president, anyone who says anything adverse to the president's interests gets the full weight of the federal government brought down on them. So if you're John Bolton, you get your home seized. If you're on the Federal Reserve and you won't lower interest rates, you get threatened with prosecution or with firing.
Really? That's your story, Adam? All right, let's take a look at the facts. Because while he is claiming this is all political theater, Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, the one he's now defending, she declared 2 different primary residents for the same time period. In fact, she signed the mortgages just 2 weeks apart. Now, I showed you this in a previous episode, but for those that are new here, take a quick look at this. These are Cook's signatures on the mortgages. So we've got 2 homes, 1 person, and no identity theft. And here's where it gets even more damning. I did a little digging and I found a smoking gun. Lisa Cook, she told the U.S. government her Atlanta home was her primary residence, yet just 6 months earlier, she was listing that same property for rent on Zillow while serving as a Federal Reserve governor. So which is it? Your home or your rental income stream? Because you can't have it both ways. But instead of acknowledging any of this, Adam Schiff, he would rather go down swinging on a mountain of lies than take the simple, honest position, let's let the investigation play out. Meanwhile, President Trump, he's not hesitating. He says if she doesn't resign, he's going to fire her.
You're going to fire Lisa Cook, the Fed governor, over her mortgage fraud?
I'll fire her if she doesn't resign, what she did was bad, so I'll fire her if she doesn't resign.
Okay, back to Schiff real quick, because he got asked one tough question with no follow-up. And tell me below if you think it looks like the panic is starting to set in.
Fannie Mae says you're, quote, engaged in a sustained pattern of possible occupancy misrepresentation on several loans. Are these allegations true? How do you respond to them?
They're patently false, and the president knows it. In the housing agency, president's person, Pulte, knows it. He's essentially doing the president's bidding against me, against Letitia James, against this person on the Federal Reserve. Mortgage is their new weapon to go after their critics. But I've been very open about my residency, both in California and in Maryland, with my constituents and with the lenders. So there's no there there.
So now mortgage fraud is the new political weapon? Or is this just the latest dirty move straight out of the Democrats' well-worn playbook? I mean, you would think Adam Schiff, the self-appointed king of investigations, would welcome a little scrutiny if he's got nothing to hide. But suddenly, when the spotlight turns on him, it's all a smear campaign. Which is ironic coming from the guy who wanted to launch a full-blown investigation into President Trump just because the stock market was doing well.
There is just all too much opportunity for people in the White House and the administration to be insider trading. We're going to demand answers from the administration. I think you're right. They're likely to stonewall, particularly if they've been engaged in corrupt insider trading. But they won't be able to hide it for good. I mean, we know who's in the administration. We can look at eventually what people are buying and selling. This will come out.
Funny, he never once mentioned Nancy Pelosi in his insider trading rants. Wonder why that is. Probably for the same reason Democrats cry foul when Republicans play by the same rules they've been abusing for years. I mean, case in point, redistricting. Kristen Welker, she tried to spin it as some sinister GOP power grab, but JD Vance, he was not about to let that narrative fly. Watch.
If President Trump's agenda is so popular, why do Republicans need to add additional seats to the map?
Well, first of all, Kristen, you have to ask yourself, why have Democrats gerrymandered their states aggressively over the past 10 to 20 years? If you look, for example, at the popular vote in a lot of these states, and Massachusetts, where 32% of the residents of Massachusetts voted for Republicans, 0 Republican federal representatives. So we're not trying to all we're doing, frankly, is trying to make the situation a little bit more fair on a national scale. The Democrats have gerrymandered their states really aggressively. We think there are opportunities to push back against that, and that's really all we're doing.
What Democrats are doing in states like Massachusetts, Illinois, and even Connecticut, that's not democracy. That's strategic silencing. Democrats have been gerrymandering aggressively for decades. They're locking out Republicans from fair representation while crying foul when they push back. But it's not just about district lines, it's also who's being counted. Because when it comes to congressional seats, the census, it doesn't just count citizens, it includes illegal immigrants too. And that skews representation in favor of blue states. Watch Vance school Welker on this.
You were able to win the House and the Senate in 2024. Why can't you do it again without adding additional
But we had
seats?
But this is a very important question, Kristen. We had way fewer House seats than we should have. 1, if the Democrats hadn't aggressively gerrymandered, and 2, if illegal aliens weren't counted in the census for purposes of apportioning congressional seats. The best estimates I've seen is that in California, for example, has 5 additional congressional seats than it should have because they count illegal aliens for the purpose of apportioning representatives. Meanwhile, Ohio, my home state, lost a representative. We're literally losing representatives for American citizens in order to give congressional representation to illegal aliens. Republicans are trying to balance out the scales a little bit for basic fairness and for the integrity of our democracy, which the president cares about as much as anybody in the country.
But of course, people who are here and who are not documented are not eligible to vote. But
They're not eligible to vote, but they do go in the congressional apportionment. That's why California has so many more seats, is because they count illegal aliens. So even though they don't vote, well, some of them actually do vote, but hopefully most of them don't, they end up getting congressional representation that ought by right go to American citizens.
I know.
It's wild how the dead and the undocumented always seem to cast their votes for Democrats. I wonder why. I did warn my family, when I die, do not let me vote blue. And if I do, I'm coming back to haunt them. All right, meantime, Hakeem Jeffries was pressed on the New York Times article that found Democrats lost registered voters in all 30 states that track party affiliation. Now listen to his response closely. I'm going to fact check it on the other side. Let's see if you can catch this. Watch.
I do want to ask about a New York Times investigation showing that Democrats are losing registered voters in all 30 states that track party registration. We're putting on the screen the data. It shows altogether Democrats have lost 2.1 million voters. Republicans have gained 2.4 million. That's a deficit that you have of 4.5 million voters. Why are voters turning away from your party? What is the problem?
Most of that activity, as I understand it, has occurred in Florida and Texas. And certainly it is the case that nationally we're going to have to invest more in these two red states.
Well, here's the problem with Hakeem Jeffries' statement. Texas doesn't even track partisan voter registration. The New York Times study, it never even included Texas because they don't collect the data. So either the House Minority Leader didn't read the report or he's just making things up. Either way, this is what delusional leadership looks like, ignoring the facts, intending fake trends, and panicking when the tide starts to turn. Now, speaking of panicked politicians, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, he just embarrassed himself on national television, attacking President Trump's bold move to restore law and order by deploying the National Guard to Washington, D.C. Watch.
The president has spent hundreds of millions of dollars to arrest 9 people in D.C. You know, that clearly he's demonstrated that he doesn't have a level of consciousness to understand what it takes to run cities, not to mention an entire country.
Let's be clear, Johnson's approval rating is a dismal 6%, and probably because of statements like that. The crime stats, they tell a much different story. Since President Trump ordered the National Guard deployment in mid-August for Washington, D.C., there hasn't been a single homicide in over 10 days. Think about that. Black residents who for years were disproportionately victimized, 112 times more likely than whites to be murdered in D.C., are finally seeing relief. So why is Mayor Johnson and so many other Democrats suddenly silent about Black Lives Matter when real action produces real results? Was it just a political slogan all along? Let me know your thoughts down below. I can also report that carjackings have plummeted 83%. Robberies, they've been reduced by 46%, and overall violent crime has dropped 22%. So the fact that any mayor or governor would refuse this level of safety for their American citizens is beyond me and do not deserve to be reelected. I will be following this story closely as it unfolds. I know there's so much more drama coming in the days ahead. Also, tomorrow's another big day with Kilmar Obrega Garcia. ICE is set to deport him to Uganda after a liberal judge controversially freed him from jail. That case and many more are on my radar. But first, check out the next video where I break down the explosive court ruling in favor of President Trump that essentially slapped down Letitia James and her absurd penalties. Plus, I dive deep into the serious allegations swirling around Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. We touched on it a little bit today, but I do a deep dive in this video now on your screen. Go ahead, click on it. I'll see you over there, and have a great rest of your weekend.